All right. Hey, good morning, YouTube. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking in. Hopefully you're not stuck in some of that water out there that's throughout the middle of America. It looked even worse last night. There was this big ball of orange settled over Nebraska and Kansas out there last night, it looked like. It looks kind of rough. We're going to check in with some of that here in a second, but yeah, pretty much from North Dakota to Texas, you're wet. We're doing pretty good out here in the west. Been nice, clear, been relatively what I would call mild temperature. Been in the 80s. Nothing severe at all. Been pretty enjoyable. Hope you're doing good. See if we checking in with anybody here. All right, Barry. Hey, good morning. How's things? Looks like you're doing pretty clear up there. Yeah, sunny, right? Yeah, it's pretty nice. But yeah, so on that heavy rain front, particular, it's in Texas. There's what the radar looked like more like yesterday and last night, and it was similar over Kansas. It looked like when I looked at it, but it's dissipated since. But very heavy rains, probably tornadoes if they wanted to. But up to 10 inches of rain, or more than 10 inches of rain, have already fallen in certain locations. It's like Houston has flooding every year. It looks like it might have some more. But that's your current radar as of about an hour ago, it looks like. So pretty significant rains up and down the coast there for Texas. They're worried about flooding forecasts everywhere but Houston, which is seems like Houston's been getting a lot of flooding the last couple of years or whatever. Additional rain coming. So that's the situation with the weather. Stay out of the rain if you can. But we had that flooding up in Michigan last week, and was that even Monday? I can't remember if that. Yeah, that was Monday, I guess, huh? This weekend up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and everything. And this is a pretty big swath cut in here. You can see it's starting to get a little bit orange and yellow here. So be on the lookout if you're planning to travel, especially. So moving on. I guess first up we'll have our most, well, yeah, we all knew that statement, story of the day. This is at a Zero Hedge. The study confirms most psychopaths live in Washington, D.C. I thought we all knew this. This is out of the dailybell.com, commented on over here. Some guy named Murphy did a study, I guess, on psychopathic tendencies or whatever, and found that District of Columbia had far higher than any other state levels of psychopathy. But the author considered it an outlier simply because it's an entirely urban area and cannot be fairly compared with larger, more geographically diverse U.S. states. In quotes, the presence of psychopaths in District of Columbia is consistent with the conjecture found in Murphy that psychopaths are likely to be the political sphere. Can't argue with that. I don't think I think we've all speculated that, just haven't got the science to prove it previously. Psychos are drawn to power, not just power corrupts. Corrupt people seek power. Government is the best industry for someone with no morals. Here's a table of psychopathy related to areas of interest. This is a statistical table, so it's probably a little harder for me to read here. Another interesting finding is that higher concentration of lawyers predict higher psychopathy prevalence, which lawyers pretty much dominate politics nowadays. The bear tree, as Bikes and Bullets would call it. So relations of psychopathy with variables of interest. Let's see, click through to this graph here, which I believe goes to the article itself. Hey, Walter, how's it going? Yeah, we call the psychopaths politicians, unfortunately. So you expect more homicides, you expect a higher urban percentage of psychopaths. In the percentages of the complete sample, as well as in DC, the psychopaths are focused on chief executives, lawyers, media, salespeople, surgeons, journalists, police officers, clergy, and chefs for some reason. Below the line of psychopathic tendencies. So I guess you'd say below the or I guess you'd say what he goes into the negative here. Care aides, nurses, teachers, but unusually high, I guess, are beauticians when you expect them to be below the mean or whatever. Kind of interesting. I guess that table would have to have a little more translation to fully understand it, but I believe the negatives mean that you're below the expected outcome for psychopathy in your specialty. New York ties for the fourth highest concentration of psychopaths among U.S. states. It ties with Wyoming. So if you take out D.C., the top three are Connecticut, California, New Jersey, New York, and Wyoming tied for fourth. The least psychotic states are West Virginia, Vermont, Tennessee, North Carolina, and New Mexico. I wouldn't think of North Carolina and Tennessee being that far down the chain. Interesting. Should not be surprising that the main correlation was the states with lowest percentage of people living in urban areas also had the lowest concentration of psychopaths. Another fine reason to stay out of the city. You got scientific proof. Psychopaths live in the city. Stay out. It's not hard. Simple math here, folks. Simple math. Simple science, right? So quoting the study itself again, while a very small percentage of individuals in any given state may actually be true psychopaths, the level of psychopathy present on average within an aggregate population is a distinct research question. While empirical operations of, oh my goodness, this is too scientific for me, I think. While empirical operations of psychopathy frequently treated as a binary categorization, the Hare Psychopathy Checklist from 1991 treats it as a spectrum. So I guess there's different levels of psychopathy, you would say. you're on the different path of being a psycho. I guess it just goes to prove that your old girlfriend was psycho. Study concludes that areas of the United States that are measured to be most psychopathic are those in the Northeast and other similarly populated regions. I don't know why Nevada's not to the bottom in Alaska then. Like Alaska's like the least populated by square mile. And as well as Wyoming. Wyoming's very low population density. The District of Columbia is measured to be far more psychopathic than any individual state in the country. Can be explained by its population density, potentially, or it's the centralization of power, like he says above. All right, so that's just a confirmatory article of everything you ever knew. Why you stay out of the city, why you don't go to Washington, D.C., etc., etc. So I found that interesting. While we're here, I guess I'll move on. Not so much a specific article, but this whole illegals and detention of children separate from their parents, supposed parents, who have been obviously in a large swath of those numbers, the children aren't actually with their parents. But a lot of articles popping up here, but what's the real issue? What's being that's getting too blown out of proportion when it's well documented that this process has been going on for over a decade. The kids being separated as they come across the border is a well documented thing. It's been happening for multiple administrations. It's not like they're getting beaten when they get separated from their parents, et cetera, or from whoever their guide is across the border, whether they're being smuggled or otherwise. So they're making way too much of this to not be trying to hide something else, in my potential opinion. You see the host of articles that are coming out this week, and it's pretty much blown up. It's not like it's getting any traction except for people crying about it, people trying to question the morals and everything else. Nobody's questioning the powers of government. Everybody's just mad at Trump. So it's interesting, but there is a potential bill being proposed for this. And where did I see that? I thought it was on Drudge, and now I don't see it. There was legislation being proposed, which I think you have to be very careful about what comes up in this, because they're gonna hide something in there in the name of the children that's going to be very detrimental to us, more than likely. Where did I see that? I mean, the DNA test thing alone, how quickly can a DNA test confirm whether or not you're related to somebody? They're gonna fine tune that process to justify all kinds of madness. Probably the interior of the country. More to follow on that. Obviously, forensic DNA tests have been around for years, but the idea that they're going to be able to quickly do this at the border, concerning that they're going to pad that off to the lower levels of law enforcement that are going to use that in everyday operations and really mess us up. But there was some proposed legislation title coming out of this, and I can't see where I saw that, because I wanted to click through that, because that's really the underlying concern here, is that they're going to change something for the worse. I just cannot for the life of me find that title. Was it in Zero Hedge? I don't think it was. Anyway, I guess I messed that up. But yeah, watch out for what the powers that be look to institute legislatively or whatever out of this whole migrant child debacle that's blown way out of proportion and way too hyped up to be something that's more than trying to push an agenda. Because if they cared about the kids, they'd have been complaining about this years ago. And I don't hear anybody was talking about the government. Yeah, Walter, a lot of them, a lot of people do end up, they're not necessarily coming over to get good jobs. These people are manipulated in a lot of ways. Hey, Castaway Planet, good morning. How's things there in your side of the world? I would say neck of the woods, but I'm not sure if you're in like the outback deserty area or if you're somewhere else. You might be on the seaside, seashore. You never know. Right, Barry? Well, yeah, people are retarded. We just covered the psychopath side. If you're not either a psychopath or you're retarded, isn't that the scale we're working on, Barry? But really, I mean, yeah, you see all this hype out of this thing, and it's all over social media. Um, they're going to try to enact something legislatively that's really going to be painful that we need to be on the lookout for, I think. Um, I, for the most part, there's always exceptions, and you would never want to give government agents too much credit. But for the most part, I feel that the humane treatment is as good as it's going to get when you're in the middle of nowhere in America and trying to figure out who's doing bad things to people out there, because there is a lot of trafficking of people across the border and whatnot, and detaining them in certain ways is not the most inhumane thing you could do when you're probably giving them the best meal they've had in a couple of weeks and the best clothing they've had maybe in their life. It was noted that there was an article about the pants were the wrong size, and like the clothing was just off a little bit. It was like just slightly off, and it wasn't dirty. It was just off in size. When most of the kids in these third world countries barely ever have clothes that fit them or clean or anything else. Um, but yeah, it's a political football to score points with in a lot of ways. But I'm also wary of the bigger agenda to enact some sort of legislation that's going to be detrimental, very, very detrimental. So just keep it on the lookout. And there was something about passing legislation, but I don't see a title headline now. Um, like in 2015, we looked it up last week. They had a lot of articles about the 2015 crisis when all the migrant children were coming up. Same process was used. They were putting holding areas, old military bases, etc. Caged, if you want to use that. I mean, you use fences to keep them all in one part of an area or whatever. Sure. Um, you know, it is a political mess, and the media is just piling on. That's for sure. All right, since I can't find that headline, but I'm sure everybody's keeping their eyes on this. But I don't get engaged in the emotional arguments that half the people bring up on that. Um, If you wanted the emotional argument, you should have been doing that 10 years ago. And you can't just yell at Trump about it. That's kind of that's how I feel. It's like you're just going to yell about Trump about this, like he's the one. Maybe not. People want to complain about America doesn't have a moral compass. Like these are the same people that don't believe in morals to begin with, because seems like they're always talking about you can't judge people. My body, my choice. The same people complaining. It's like all of a sudden these people care about families and other things. It's a pretty bizarre mentality to have. So I will move on. Hey, good morning, Walker. What's up? Say hello, all right? Get out there and get your work on. Thanks for dropping in. So I found this interesting. This is out of physics.org, I guess. Study or scientific review of large city water shortages. And we've talked about Cape Town in South Africa quite a bit. And water's been noted to be one of the big issues of future development. Is it really water shortage, or is the issue that there's too many people in one place away from the water? It's hard to get the water to them. Would be my hypothesis if I was to do a study. The people are just not where the water is. It's not so much there's not enough water, but we'd have to study that to get the empirical evidence. But so this is a physics.org article. This graphic from South Africa. This is an example of how to live with only 50 liters or 13 gallons of water a day. That's interesting. So that's a good prepping graphic for you if you want to live on 1 liter for cooking, 3 liters for drinking. Whew, that's pushing it. Only 3 liters for drinking. That's a pretty low number. Especially it says water, tea, and coffee. Like, yeah, 9 liters for dishwashing, 10 liters for shower, 1 liter for pets, 2 liters for teeth and hands. I don't need 2 liters of. You don't need hardly any water to brush your teeth and rinse. That's would be I switch some of those numbers around, but that's just an example for people to get numbers. You could probably get it under these numbers probably bump up that drinking water number. Just expect to do more work when you're washing dishes by hand, washing laundry by hand, doing all things minus the water. But moving on down to the study. So it starts off with the question, will South Africa's second largest city dry up on August 19th of this year? Now, they said they were pretty much out of the woods for this season, I thought. August 19th would be going into their spring, kind of leading out of winter. Cape Town City Council wished to highlight the impending cuts to domestic water supply for its more than 3 another countdown. It looks like they just got out of the last countdown last month. They've restarted another one, I guess. So what's happening in Cape Town? If you've been listening here, you know what's going on in Cape Town. They're having problems. But going on down, they just sum it up. Cape Town's current problems are far more serious than a simple seasonal slump. Prolonged drought raging since 2015. Why do they got to use so many This is a scientific article raging. Having descriptive terms like that doesn't do much good. Reservoirs have not been able to recover their reserves over the last 3 winters, leading to steady decline in water shortage rates. There's a graph below. Only significant premature and rainy prevent a general water shutdown. Even then, it is unlikely that water storage rates will rise to secure levels over the course of one season. This is in South Africa, and I can't read it. This is the reservoir levels, it looks like. The black line is where we are. So traditional averages are rates, and the black line is where they are well below down here. That's not good. Aggravated factors such as highly sustained population growth, 80% population growth between 1995 and 2018, and water sharing between the city and agricultural land. Yeah, similar to Vegas. Vegas, LA, places like that are going to run into these problems soon here. That's the takeaway I think people need to roll with. The water stored in Cape Town's water supply reservoirs is not only used for drinking. A third of its volume is used to irrigate approximately 37,000 acres of vines and orchards that surround the city. And if they're winemaking operations, that's definitely a highly uses a lot of water compared to some other farming techniques. Wonder how their water rights issues work for those farmers. Are these the same agricultural lands that the government's going to kick people off their land soon and confiscate? Then they'll just do what they want with the water, probably wasting more of it than if it was in private hands. So they implemented a policy of controlling water consumption, stabilizing it at a level reached in 1999. So they've been working on this for a long time. Now, what's the correlation of the rest of the world? Come on. Move on. I was looking for the larger world effect. Then with we've been following Cape Town forever. Looking beyond South Africa, current troubles, we can wonder whether this crisis is local or global. So there was a BBC list of 11 cities with occurring water supply problems. Barcelona was, here's something you didn't hear about. In 2008, Barcelona was forced to ship in water on tankers, and in 9 and 10, Melbourne residents lived under the threat of water cuts following an extraordinary long drought. 1998 to 2010. The same drought also forced Sydney to implement water restrictions, reducing consumption by 20%. Living in the city, just be ready for it. So here's some of their solutions. Consumption habits, it's kind of an obvious. Improve water use management and agriculture. Improve distribution efficiency. Reduce water losses in water transport and distribution networks. 25% of drinking water in France is lost to leaks in the network. That's a pretty bad system. You got a quarter of your water lost on leaks. Improve natural flow predictions in order to optimize the use of surface water. better manage underground water sources. So this is population growth rates. Better manage underground water sources for large cities that rely on underground water. The main threat to supply is overuse. Groundwater is accessible to a large number of local occupants who do not always understand the resource they are using. Water management solutions should be adopted collectively. We must control consumption. Keywords here. Allocate usage rights. Above all, make sure these rules are upheld by installing meters on wells. Yeah, a lot of hot button topic issues, right? Keywords there, if you're here in Nevada. Collectivism, controlling consumptions, meters on wells. Yeah, that's all bad signs. We had this issue pop up a couple of years ago. We talked about it in a chat. There was some pretty strong language used. We showed some quotes from a local radio station. People were ready to. It's pretty much like the Old West. People were ready to go to guns over their water. When the individuals on local properties aren't the one misusing the water, it's usually those collective organizations that collectively manage water that are the problem. Check out here in the side chat. I've been running my mouth for a little too long. Oh, Walker decided to chat it up. I thought he was leaving. Let's talk about the miners when they show up. He's not an emotional guy. Yeah. All right. Yep. Send them back where they came from for the most part. All right. Walker had a good one. Castaway, they don't build dams. Is that in reference to the water loss issue they talked about? I think that was the pipes mostly. Is there a Barry? Barry, is there a Nestle plant in California? I know we had that issue with that plant in Michigan that was sucking water out for like $1 a gallon or something crazy. Or no, I mean, yeah, millions of gallons on the dollar. But I didn't know there's one in California. Yeah, the issue is California is definitely they're paying a lot less for the resource as far as what they pay for water, and probably in taxes they probably pay a lot to maintain the infrastructure, but because the LA Water Authority is massive, probably the largest government organization in LA is the LA Water Authority, money-wise. But the people don't realize what they actually have to pay for water because they don't adjust the price. And the thing is that other areas haven't restricted their, made them pay for it. If you can't get a minimum of 2 gallons per minute, banks right here won't finance you for anything. Are you talking about like on your well, if you can't get a minimum 2 gallons per minute out of your well or something, Barry? You can't get financed? Is that for a bank you're saying? Or I mean like to buy a new home or something? A home that someplace has a well on it? I'm not sure what 2 gallons per minute minimum. I would imagine most everywhere you could pump that out. Interesting. So they move on in this article. What about desalination? One of the solutions offered is industrial production of fresh water by desalinating seawater or brackish underground water. Those places exist as well. Near East and Middle Eastern countries have tried this. Mediterranean Europe is still developing in Spain. Some examples: Cyprus, Malta. Rare in France, but the island of Seine and Haute, small desalination plants. desalinization remains very costly, around €50, half a euro per cubic meter for very large plants. Consumes a great deal of energy, 18 kilowatts, 3.5 to 18 kilowatts an hour per cubic meter. That does sound high, depending on the technique used. Melbourne provides an instructive example. So in Melbourne, the government built a seawater desalination plant to supply drinking water to the city. Construction began in 2009 during the drought. But the plant did not become operational until 2012 when the drought had already broken, similar to what Cape Town dealt with, I think. Because they go into Cape Town next. This desalination plant did not receive its first order for water until 2017. 5 years of ineffective use. Current crisis in Cape Town reminds us that water does not automatically flow from our taps. But what about the desalination in Cape Town? That's the end of the article. Still haven't found any follow-up on what happened to the desalination in Cape Town. They're supposed to have 3 different plants starting up there about that. So there's your water is life, like you say, Barry, indeed. But again, large cities where people are concentrated, it's hard to deliver that concentration of water. People weren't designed to be crammed into these places, but we've done it anyway, which I think is our biggest problem. But if you're not short of water anywhere from North Dakota to Texas today, and probably Arkansas and Louisiana and other places like that. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for checking in. Hope you go out and have a good day. So we got Barry Wood, Castaway Planet. Walter Davis joined us. Walker Outdoors was with us for a minute. Unless somebody's got anything else they want to chime in with, we will wrap this up and move on and see you Friday. Make sure you hit the like button, of course, or not. I got to start doing some surveying of the crowd to see how much YouTube is really manipulating things. See if I can get some better feedback on where people are watching and what Google's saying or watching, because I see some real inconsistencies on what is getting put out and what Google's telling me. It's like, doesn't make sense. But that's just my own analysis. So, all right, folks, with no further comment, looks like we'll move on and see you Friday. You guys have a good one. Live free.